let's talk about Pacquiao versus Thurman happening this weekend. PBC pay-per-view, Fox pay-per-view. This is perhaps one of the better pay-per-view cards we've had in some time, probably since maybe Mayweather Canelo, which had Garcia Matisse as the co-main. That was an amazing doubleheader, right? This one doesn't have the strong doubleheader attachment, but it does have just the depth of the card, having a lot of names, a lot of relevant fighters within their divisions. But first, obviously, let's talk about the main event, Pacquiao versus Thurman. Pacquiao is in this stage where it's really hard to sort of judge and determine his fights in the top of the division because he's still looked fantastic. Like, he's in this weird stage where he's tweaked his game enough, slowed down the pace of his style, be a little more defensive-minded in his approach, that he is now just outboxing a bunch of these guys that are still relevant in a way. And on top of that, Thurman, 2-year layoff. The fight against Josito Lopez did not look great for him. Gary's somewhere listening going to mention that Thurman's always seems like he's not interested in the sport in some way. This is a hard matchup to determine and pick because Pacquiao's age countered with his seeming renaissance in his late age, and Thurman's youth, but combined with lack of real fire for the sport at this point, I'm hesitant to pick anyone. I can see Pacquiao outboxing Thurman, just sort of piecing him apart, but sort of controlling the pace, and Thurman missing. Or I can see Thurman be on the outside, outboxing Pacquiao, making Pacquiao sort of engage and expose himself to counters, and Thurman being successful at that. If we see a on point Thurman, I again hesitant to pick anyone at this point. So before I do make my pick, Rob, your thoughts? Pacquiao Thurman, PBC pay-per-view main event.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a difficult pick in my opinion. The bookies have got Manny as a slight favourite and Thurman is just a very slight underdog. It is tricky because it's a 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao against a Thurman that's coming off the long layoff, the elbow surgery, the injury. Like you say, didn't look particularly great against Josecito Lopez. He looked quite good early on. He got the early knockdown, but he, kind of allowed Josecito to piece him up in one of the rounds. He really pressured and hit Keith Thurman a lot. But from what we've heard, Keith didn't really have a trainer for that camp. He didn't really have a strength and conditioning coach for that camp. He's got like 2 for this one. Proper nutritionist, everything's and from his interviews, he seems like the kind of like the Thurman of old is back, the talk, the way he's talking. I don't know. For me, I think there are maybe more ways that Thurman can win this fight than ways that maybe Manny can win it. But that being said, it's real 50-50 for me. There's a lot of sort of question marks still attached to this, and I guess we only find out come fight night. But a good performance for Pacquiao obviously gets him that Amir Khan fight. I'm joking. I might lean. I really don't know.
I'm leaning Thurman, to be honest.
Thurman.
I'm leaning Thurman. I think he's going to look better and a little bit more sharper, obviously, since the Lopez fight. It's going to be a second fight back since the long layoff. I think that's going to help. I think ring rust was a factor with Thurman in that comeback fight. It seemed to be an issue. And plus, we've heard stories about his training camp for that fight not being really dedicated, so to speak, right? We've heard stories like he really wasn't sparring for that training camp. He really wasn't in camp that long for that fight. Unlike this one where it seems like he took it serious like he did with the Porta fight and the Danny Garcia fight. In both fights, he came on point. I'm leaning Thurman slightly, probably by decision. But again, this is a pick'em fight. I could see Pacquiao just being a little bit quicker to the draw, throwing a little more straighter shots than Thurman. I can just see Pacquiao edging him. But I'm picking Thurman. I just think that he's gonna figure it out in this fight more so than he did in the Lopez fight. That's what I'm banking on, unfortunately.
I mean, I think we're going to have to see a bigger improvement, a big improvement from the Josecito
Oh yeah.
Lopez fight. It's going to be quite a jump, I think, because yeah, I'll maybe lean towards. I'll go with the bookies on this. If Pacquiao's a slight favorite, I might just lean slightly towards Pacquiao. But again, that's not. Yeah, man, Pacquiao's definitely winning this fight. Thurman's this, Thurman's that. Pacquiao's the truth, or anything like that. This is just for me. It's a pick 'em fight, and you picked one, I've picked the other. So symmetry for the show.
Next up, Ordonis Ugas versus Omar Figueroa Jr. Even though obviously I think the Caleb Plant fight should have been just the co-main event, and they should have stuck these fights on the Fox prelims. But digressing from that point, Ugas Figueroa Jr. being the co-main really should be a fun action fight. Both guys like to engage on the inside, like to exchange with combinations. Ugas probably had his best performance of his career against Sean Porter, even though he lost. And let's be honest, Omar Figueroa has not looked great as of late. Has been dealing with some issues outside the ring. I feel like this is an easy pick for Ugas to win in a firefight, but still win the firefight in probably dramatic fashion within 10 rounds or so. And perhaps be a weekend stealer in terms of fight entertainment. But again, I think Ugas is just a little bit sharper, a little bit stronger, just more in his prime, so to speak, than Figueroa. Even though Figueroa is still a young guy, Figueroa's just been through far more wear and tear than Ugas has in his career. I think this is a pretty easy pick for Ugas, even though it should be a fun fight. Rob?
Yeah, it should be a fun fight, and yeah, I'm picking Ugas. I think he possibly beat Porter in a close splash, not super controversial, but yeah, for me, I think he slightly shaded it against Porter. So yeah, I think he, despite it being a loss, I think Ugas is just on a upward kind of trend, and yeah, I expect him to come away with the victory.
Next up, Luis Nery versus Juan Carlos Payano. Poor Juan Carlos Payano, man. Gets iced by Inoue. Has one comeback fight, so he's not going straight into this fight. Though I think that fight was off TV. I even forget who he beat. But Luis Nery is one of the most devastating hitters and fighters in the low weight classes, period. Unfortunately, he has dealt with PED issues, weight issues, and such that have sort of kept him outside the conversation in sort of the recent year or so. But he is still one of those guys that on any given night, he could beat everyone. And on top of that, beat them up in the process. Payano, while a long-time perennial guy in the division, has been at the top for, 4+ years, 5+ years, it seems, even though he has a relatively short career. He's been at the top for most of it. That, I think, is an indictment sort of on maybe his wear and tear factor. And again, the Inoue knockout is just, it's too fresh in my mind for me to pick Payano against Luis Nery, who arguably is the second best guy in the division. Yeah, Nery by KO within 6. Nery is a little bit sloppy at times, so I think it's going to take him a little bit longer to get the knockout than Inoue, who's just technically a master. But again, Nery via KO, dramatic KO within 6 rounds. Rob?
Yeah, I'd expect. I think it might be a tougher one. I don't think Near is going to make it look as easy as Inoue, but I think Inoue in some fashion is kind of just a freak of the division. So maybe expecting too much of Neary to. But does he get the knockout? I don't know. Payano had never been stopped or anything like that before. So he was expected to be durable for the Inoue fight, which proved to be.
Lasted, 40-something seconds?
It was bad. It was like the 1-2 from Hal. It was horrific.
And that face that Payano made, man, he was in another dimension.
It was like someone on Fortnite with full health and shield. The jab took the shield out, and the right hand took the rest of the health down, and it was eliminated. It was game over.
You've been watching your kid play Fortnite far too much, Rob.
Yeah, I was just, being down with the kids there. Somewhat for the
you're just being hip. You're just being hip.
Yeah. You know,
Oh my
not to
God.
be deceiving. No, yeah, but I expect Neary to get the win. But will it be as impressive as a new eight? I don't know. We'll see. But I expect him to get the win.
Oh God, that's good. I don't know. I think the Lipinets John Molina fight's on the Fox portion of the telecast, so I'm gonna put that there. Caleb Plant versus Mike Lee. God, this should just be a dominant performance for Caleb Plant. Even though Mike Lee's undefeated, he's fought no one. He is irrelevant in the division. He's a guy with an undefeated record, and that's it. Doesn't have a real deep amateur pedigree to talk about. I'm going to talk about with F.A. Agabi's opponent. I think this should be an easy, dominant performance from Caleb Plant. Maybe even a TKO win for him in the later rounds. I know Plant's not a KO guy, but I'm not impressed by Mike Lee at all. This is clearly a first title defense showcase fight, right, Rob? I mean, he comes off the great career performance with Jose Uzcategui, and I think they give him a gimme fight for his first title defense on a big card. It makes sense why they did that. Unfortunately, it does not make sense his sort of placement on the card because, Rob, we know Vegas crowds. They're not going to be there till halfway through Ugas Figueroa Jr. And so Caleb Plant fighting that deep on the undercard is going to fight against an opponent with no one watching in the crowd. Makes no sense.
Isn't it? I thought it was that fight was somewhere else, and that's leading into it.
No. That's what they were thinking about, but then they decided to scrap that. It's the same venue, same place. It's just that part of the card's on Fox, and the rest of the card's on pay-per-view, obviously. Like the Mayweather McGregor fight.
Television wise, the co-main.
No, because you would.
So what? Caleb Plant's opening the card.
No, Caleb Plant's like the headliner of the prelims. So you have a prelim section, which I think is FA, and then Sergey Lipinets, and then Caleb Plant. And I could be wrong exactly on the fight order. Like Lipinets could be on the pay-per-view portion, and then the pay-per-view would be Neary, Ugas, and then the Thurman Pacquiao fight.
That is fucking weird.
Yeah.
Why isn't it the co-main?
Bro, just don't.
Hang on, let me look at the Fox Sports PBC poll. Caleb Plant. Oh no, I see why he got 7% in the poll. If only other was on the card.
Yo, that was
only Callum, the other Smith, was on the card. He maybe would be co-main, but no, 1% better. He's a 1% better super middleweight boxer than Anthony Durrell. Oh my god! But yeah, Caleb Plant for me. I'll be honest.
And quickly, they're obviously trying to imitate what they did with the Sean Porter Thomas Delorme fight for the Mayweather McGregor undercard. Remember that the Fox, maybe because you're not in the U.S. They had the Fox prelims, right, and then which is on main Fox, not FS1, so it gets like sort of prime time billing, right, and on basic free TV.
Yeah.
And the main event for the prelims for that was Porter Delorme originally, right? And then Porter had, I think, a family death.
Oh, that's right. A family member died or something.
Yeah,
right?
and then it became Ugas Delorme, right? But originally it was Sean Porter was going to be in the undercard of Mayweather McGregor, but not be a co-main. He was like the fourth fight down from the top, main eventing the Fox part of the card.
So they had and then it was Showtime, wasn't it? Showtime pay-per-view.
Was it Showtime? No.
McGregor,
it was Showtime pay-per-view, but they had a Fox prelim portion, which is weird.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It wasn't CBS free. It was Fox. It definitely was Fox. I remember that.
Oh, okay.
And I think the reason why they did that and they're experimenting with that is because the UFC does something similar, to be honest. Weird. Like the UFC will have half of the card be on, let's say, ESPN nowadays, and they have a big name sort of as like the last fight of that telecast, and then you switch over to the pay-per-view on ESPN Plus, and that'll be the rest of the card, which is another 5 fights with the main event.
So what time will Plant be on TV?
5 p.m. probably Pacific Standard Time, maybe 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which would be then 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And then that would be
Damn you!
2 a.m. 2 a.m. UK time. Give or
Yeah,
take.
fuck. So if you're out on the East Coast, you don't expect to see Thurman Pacquiao till like midnight onwards.
Oh, of course.
That's gonna be super late, right?
Yeah, of course.
Wow.
That's how it is usually though. Like main
Oh,
events don't start till like 9 p.m. usually on the West Coast, and that's midnight on the East Coast, and that's the
yeah.
usual. That's just
Oh, okay.
and that's also for like a lot of other sports too. Like all primetime sports sort of end or start around that time.
Well,
It
yeah.
sucks.
No, it'd be interesting to see what kind of numbers Caleb Plant does. 'Cause I don't know. That's
Oh,
seems a little early.
especially
But
since the FS1 card he did with Uzgatigi did gangbuster numbers. Surprisingly,
yeah, they've been dropping right. Almost every show they're just coming down. I guess
No, I think that was just a blip, man. Honestly, for some reason that was a blip because every other card's been really lackluster in terms of viewership. Like the Jamal James one this weekend, we did like 300,000.
Showtime.
Um,
Oh yeah.
no, that was FS1, and
That was
and then
Showbox.
no, it wasn't Showbox.
Oh, whatever.
We had a Showbox card this weekend, but that was the Otto Whalen
Oh, that
fight.
didn't happen.
I don't care. I didn't watch it.
DJ Florence wasn't medically cleared.
Oh, really? That's funny. Digressing though. Sergey Lepinich, John Molina Jr. Sergey Lepinich should win this fight easy. John Molina Jr. hasn't looked good ever in his career. Like he's been the guy that's like, I'm gonna go out there on my shield and get beat up by these top guys. And Sergey Lepinich looked fantastic against Lamont Peterson. He honestly looked pretty good against Mikey Garcia too in retrospect. Right, Rob? Like that was sort of the first sign that Mikey wasn't perfect for 140 and 147 was the Lepinich fight. I think Lepinich should just walk through Molina here, get a late TKO victory. Last fight on this card, we're going to talk about Efe Agabi versus Ali Demizirin, who was in the 2016 Olympics and lost to Filip Hrgovic. So obviously, unfortunate for him to meet Filip in the first round of the Olympics. Poor guy. I mean, that's one of the best prospects to come from the Olympics, and he faced him in the first round. But digressing, another undefeated heavyweight fighting another undefeated heavyweight. I know this isn't on the level, obviously, of Dubois Gorman, but I love this. You know, this is an undefeated guy with real amateur pedigree versus an amateur guy with a lot of hype. Love those type of matchups. And it's quite different than, let's say, like the Mike Lee Caleb Plant fight, because Mike Lee has no pedigree, no hype behind him. No one cares. Digressing. Rob, any last thoughts about this card, or ready to move on?
Oh no, I've got to say, I sit here obviously quite often mocking shit that's over there, but I can't knock this card. It's got, maybe some of them are like brilliant matchups, but it's names, and that's what you need. It's kind of like what we get here. We get like, oh, he's on the card, he's on the card, he's on the card. Against who? All right. But, it's a lot of names on the card rather than, wow, the main event. What's the, oh, shit, that's crap. You're further down, you're like, oh, dear. But this is pretty stacked.
Yep, a lot.
So I've got no problem with this one being pay-per-view for you guys. I'm always looking out for you, trying to say that that's not pay-per-view worthy. You shouldn't have to pay for one this month.
Nah, this one we got to pay for, guys.
But this one's all right. But look, we've got to pay for this one as well over here.
You got to pay for two. You got to pay for two this week.
Yeah.
God. Luckily, it is cheaper for you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be like £40 total.
So it honestly, with the conversion rate, I think with your two pay-per-views combined, ours is still more expensive.
Yes, it's still less than your one.
Yep. Oh my God, that's crazy.